as a fine arts department, we only get one chance at it. We have to nail it. The first time we do it, we don't get multiple chances. And that's just a great life lesson to teach students to aim for excellence every time they do something.
Welcome to the BJU Press Teacher Edition podcast, where Christian educators are encouraged and inspired as we bring you interviews, practical ideas, strategies, and answer your questions about teaching in today's culture. And here's your host, Jenny Copeland.
Welcome back for another exciting episode here on the Teacher Edition podcast. I'm so thankful for each of you, and I'm thankful you have chosen to join us. I hope you will walk away encouraged. As we get started, just a reminder to take a minute to subscribe to the podcast and go check us out on social media. We are Teacher Edition Podcast on Facebook. You can also find us on Instagram and TikTok at Teacher Edition Pod. Don't forget, we are also on YouTube as Teacher Edition Podcast. I also want to once again invite you to go to our website, teachereditionpodcast.com. There you can subscribe to our emails. You can also submit your questions. We are ready for some more questions, so step out and be the one to submit some to us. Not only will you get to hear your question answered on the show, but other listeners who likely probably have the same question as you do, at least at some point, will also benefit as well. One last reminder, we would appreciate it if you would take a minute to give us a positive rating and a review. Your ratings and reviews help us reach and encourage more educators. For today's episode, I am so excited to welcome Emily Nakamura to the show. I have known Emily, I guess, indirectly for many years, and I've watched her serve so faithfully. Recently, I was overseeing a robotics competition, and Emily was zooming around, serving, making sure we had what we needed, and just being so helpful, all while managing all of her own responsibilities at the competition. And I thought, aha, Emily, I need to have her on the show so listeners can meet her and just be encouraged by her ministry. She's been a teacher at Raleigh Christian Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina for 26 years. She started as a fourth grade teacher. She then took off a few years when her children were born, but then she came back to RCA as an English teacher and a music teacher. And currently she is the fine arts director for the school. And I will add, they have a top-notch fine arts program there. Just a little side note. She is also the school choir director, piano teacher, speech teacher, and the high school English teacher. Emily, I think she must have more than 24 hours in her day. I'm not sure how she fits all those things in. She is very passionate about training future church musicians. And I'm really excited to welcome her to the show to talk fine arts today. So Emily, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, so Emily, you have a really interesting story. You went from fourth grade to English teacher, and then now music teacher, and then fine arts director. You have a lot going on there. Tell us about that journey and how you came to be the fine arts director at RCA.
Well, I was an elementary education major in college, and music was my minor. I grew up in a household. My dad was a music educator for 50 plus years, and my mom taught piano and choir as well. So music was part of our life. We all had to take piano lessons, and then they had us all take a band or string instrument. And so it had been part of my life. I loved the piano, but growing up in an environment, my dad was a college professor. I was surrounded by phenomenal musicians all the time. And I felt very strongly that God wanted me to be an educator. And I didn't think the music aspect, I didn't think I was a good enough piano player to make that my full-time job. But I see now God was preparing me for what he has me to do now. And so as we came to Raleigh Christian Academy, my husband's the band director here at the school. So I started out, as you said, as the fourth grade teacher, and then I had our daughter, and then 2 years later, our son. So I stayed home for 3 years with them, and I came back, but I wasn't ready to come back full time. And so I said, could I work part time? And you can't be elementary part time. And so I knew
Yeah, that
they
would be
had a
tricky.
need in the music area. And so I said, well, I'd be willing to help out. I can teach general music because that's elementary age. I felt comfortable with that, and teaching piano lessons. So that's how I came in. And right before the school year started, when I came back part-time, the administrator said, hey, we have a 10th grade English class. We need somebody to teach. Oh, you could do it, Emily. And are you sure? And so I stepped into that role, and I loved teaching English, and I've taught every grade except seventh grade. That's the only grade I haven't taught English over the course of the years. And so I started out teaching piano, general music, accompanying choirs. And then over the years, different choir directors have left and they asked me to step into that role. And probably 15 years ago, our administrator said, Emily, how do you think you'd like being the fine arts coordinator for our school? They never really had somebody that took all that responsibility. They kind of divvied it up. And I said, well, Mr. Owsley, if you think I can do it, I'll attempt to do it. And so that's how I got into that role as fine arts coordinator, just all the registrations that have to be done and all of those things. And my mother's very organized and she taught me to be that way. And so I've enjoyed that aspect of it. So that's how I became our fine arts coordinator here.
Okay, so I'm quite confident as you're telling that story, there were many people listening who totally connected with that right before school started story. Yeah,
Right.
how many of us have been there? So I had one of those right before school when you were hired to teach this grade and now we're going to have you teach 2 grades. And by the way, it's good to know you haven't taught 7th grade because we need to see about working that into your
You're
schedule because I
right.
mean, not like you have enough to do, but
And I
we
should
definitely need to
add
fill in that gap.
I should add that 10th when I taught 10th grade English, we had a separate honors class and regular, and the
Oh my.
honors teacher, that was her planning period, so she sat in the classroom every day as I taught my first 2 years. She always says she wasn't listening, but it's still I think
Yeah,
she
I think you
was.
had a built-in observer. Sorry,
Right.
Emily.
So that was good for me because she helped me a lot to be
Yeah.
able to do that job of
Yeah,
teaching
hidden
English.
blessing. Okay, so we have talked some on the Teacher Edition podcast about fine arts in Christian schools. I think overall, we see a trend towards fine arts programs being cut or downgraded due to finances, lack of interest, lack of personnel, whatever it is. I'm guessing you would have very strong feelings contrary to wanting to do that. What do you see are the reasons Christian schools should have or need to have a strong fine arts program?
Well, as I thought about that question, I first of all thought of just music education in general. And it's so important. And I've looked at a lot of research over the years, and there's a strong correlation between a student's academic success and their participation, specifically in music, because that's the main area I do. I know there's art, and we have a great art teacher, and I do help out in the speech area, but music is predominantly what I do. And there's a strong correlation between those two. And that's what we often tell parents. Having your student involved is so good for their academics because it teaches them to be disciplined and it teaches them to work well with others. And I always like to tell my piano students, playing the piano is the only activity that anyone can do that you use both sides of your brain at the same time. And it really helps so much in so many areas. But as a Christian school, you go to the Bible and God commands us to do it. We had Patch Pirate Club at our church and we quoted every week Colossians 3:16, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly in all wisdom, teaching and admonishing one another in psalms and hymns and spiritual songs, singing with grace in your hearts to the Lord. God commands us to sing. And
Right.
we are failing our students when we're not teaching them to follow all the commands of the Bible. I tell them it's an imperative sentence. It's not, if you feel like it, God tells us to do these things. And if a Christian school is not teaching their students, they're not following all the areas that God wants us to train our students in. And that's so important.
Very true. And I love that verse. So that's perfect. Competitions are typically a significant part of Christian school. So I want to transition a little bit here because often we think of athletic competitions when
Right.
you talk about competitions at a school. What about fine arts? So, in your experience, what would you say are the benefits of having your students compete in a fine arts competition? What do you think?
Well, I tell my students and their parents the most benefit from competition is the preparation for competition because there's just
Sure.
something different about, you assign a student something to practice for a piano lesson and they come back and play it for their teacher. That's so different than preparing something for competition. And so, really, the biggest benefit is preparing your students for competition. And even in my choirs, that preparation for competition and being held accountable by someone else, it's good for me as the director, and it's great for the students, that preparation for competition.
Yeah. And there's nothing that beats those competition days. I'm sorry. Like just even being at competitions, I'm not even involved in them, but I just feel like this rush, like I should be grabbing my music and running from place to place, and having all my,
Right.
checking my measures to make sure they're numbered and all those fun things you have to do as you are in those competitions. And we made so many memories in those.
Right.
I'm sure you too, just
Yes.
probably on this side, it's a little more exhausting than it used to
Right.
be,
But I
right?
remember as a student growing up in the different competitions, and I have just great memories of it with the students. And I told our student body we had an assembly before fine arts. In athletics, they get lots of chances to play games, and then they go to they have their conference games and all of that, and they have lots of chances. But as a fine arts department, we only get one chance at it. We have to nail it the first time we do it. We don't get multiple chances. And that's just a great life lesson to teach students to aim for excellence every time they do something. And that's
That's really good
something we
thought.
can't I wish I could want the excellence for my students, but we have to create that desire that they want excellence. And I think fine arts competition creates that desire for excellence in them.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's so rewarding. When they get in
Yes.
there and they do it, it doesn't matter if they win. Yes, we
Right.
want to strive for that, but that experience and doing their best and just, God has built that into us, that reward, that excitement, that fulfillment when you have done your best and given your best for the Lord and worked hard and then being able to participate. I love that. Okay, so fine arts is obviously bigger than preparing for and participating in competitions. We know that. Emily, what are some other activities? So, thinking outside of competitions, what are some other activities that your fine arts department participates in other than competitions? Do you have any, or what are your thoughts on that?
At our school, our elementary students specifically, we start them in elementary choir in 3rd grade. And so in the fall, usually in October, and then we do it again in February, we have a fine arts assembly where the choirs get to perform for the student body and the bands. And that also gives them a checkpoint of we're aiming for this at this point. To learn these pieces to present, and it allows our student body, our whole elementary comes, they get to see it and get excited about being part of it. We even have soloists, piano solos play, and it allows the parents to come and see the progress their student is making. Our school, we teach private instrumental lessons, and I know not all schools are able to do that, but they don't hear them in that band setting. They just hear them at home honking away. And so they get to hear them, and then the excitement for the student and the parent to hear them in October, then they get to hear them again in December, and then they hear them in February, and then when we go to competition, just to see that progress, and it's great for the students and their parents to encourage them to keep going on in it. So that's one thing that we do. The state of North Carolina, where we teach, has an all-state band and choir festival. I'm not sure how many states have it. I know the public schools have it. That's what I competed in the state of Florida growing up was the state of Florida had all-state band. But this gives an opportunity for instead of competing with these people that you go to competition with, you're all working together and they audition for their seats. And we come together for a clinic and they work with a director for 3 days and then they have a concert. And it's the students love it. It's a great opportunity for them. And we have that for choir as well. So that's something that we do in the state of North Carolina. Our students help out in chapel, whether they sing in the praise team or they do a solo, we give them that way. We have what's called senior saints at our church, and they meet once a month, and we send different music groups. Sometimes it's just classes to go in there and sing for them, and it's so wonderful for our senior saints that are in there and the students. It's just a great learning experience for them to learn how to interact with others and show the love of Jesus to them. And then church service, we're a church school, and not everyone that attends our school goes to our church, but many of them do. And so I know they participate in our church music, and I know others at other churches they're able to participate as well.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so I want to come back to your first idea there. I love having the older students perform for the younger. It gives them a vision. I mean, it's a great audience for the older students too, to be able to practice and play and all that in front of them. But so great for those starting musicians to see, where they can go and what they can be involved in and participate in. So I really love that idea. And I heard a trend throughout what you were saying. I heard ministry. And it's
Yes.
just not all about competing and winning trophies, but it's ministering to others, like you mentioned with your senior saints and helping in the church. And I love that because I know you have a heart for that.
And that's really the philosophy of our music department, that was taught to me as I came into it and, the mentors that I had because I wasn't a music major. I was a piano minor, but I played in band growing up. I didn't sing in choir except for 4th grade. That was the only year I ever sang in choir. So when I got thrust into it, I really did not know what I was doing. And, I had a lot of people that came and I could ask them questions, and obviously, my parents and others helped me so much. But the philosophy that I was taught here at our school that I love so much is that we are training our future church musicians. If we have students that go on and, I haven't yet, but maybe one day we'll have students that play in some world renowned symphony or whatever, or play the piano. Professionally, but that's not our ultimate goal. Our ultimate goal is we're training our future church musicians, and, that's what we want them to see it as is, yes, competition is great, but that's not your ultimate goal. Your ultimate goal is to serve the Lord with what you're learning.
Good to come back to that foundation because we can easily get lost in the other things
Yes.
that feed into a program. So those are great insights, good, just a good way to think and, bring our thoughts back in line as we're in the midst of the busyness and all that. Great insights. Okay, so Emily, as we close out this episode, we have listeners who are working in fine arts every day. But honestly, fine arts is a program that touches everyone. So it includes the teachers bringing their students to music class or art class, or maybe supporting their concerts or going to recitals, on and on. It isn't just only about the fine arts teachers only. So do you have any final thoughts, advice, or words of encouragement for listeners along the topic of fine arts? Is there anything you would like to leave with them by means of encouragement?
Well, show up for your students. When they have concerts and programs, they love it when they see their teachers there. I try to make a point. My dad taught me this. I show up for my students for their athletic events because I know that's important in their life. And so I don't go to their away games, but their home games, I try to be there to support them because I know that's important for them. And the students notice, they'll if I happen to not be there, "Where were you, Miss Nakamura?" But the same thing is true with fine arts. They love their teachers to come and support them. The teachers know because they send them to their piano lessons during the school day. They know that they're taking piano lessons, but they don't really get to hear them. And it's so important to students that the teachers be there to support them for that because that's important to them. And I would say for those similar situations to me, I know there's a lot of people in the fine arts area that that's what they were trained for, but there's a lot of us, especially in smaller schools, we're doing stuff that we really don't feel comfortable doing. But I'm reminded, and the God has reminded me time and time again, faithful is he that calleth you, who also will do it. I know that I am where God wants me, doing what he wants me to. As a 20-year-old in college, I never dreamed that this is what I would be doing now. I thought I would be teaching elementary my whole life, but I love what I get to do now, and I can look back and see God had preparing me for this, and God has you there for a specific reason. We've been at the same school now since we graduated from college, and so students are getting older. Now we're teaching former students' children, and it makes us feel old. But I recently got to play in a church service where one of my choir students directed the choir at our Spanish church. One of my piano students accompanied them, and I got to play with them. And it was such an amazing moment for me. I may not be the most qualified choir director or piano teacher, but God had me there at that time for that reason, and I got to experience that with my students. And I have to tell myself, coming off of nationals that we just had, not comparing myself to other teachers and music departments. It's so easy in the fine arts area to compare yourself to others because that's what we do. We spend a lot of our time competing and you compare yourself to others because that's what competition is. Did you get first, second, or third? And not comparing yourself to them. It's really, really hard not to do that. But I have to pray and ask the Lord all the time, Lord, help me not compare myself to others. I know that I'm doing what you want me to do, and I can't compare myself to others. And I think, it can go the other way. Those that are extremely talented and they've got these amazing groups, they can sometimes, I don't think they mean to, but they look down on those that
Sure.
maybe don't
Sure.
have that same group. And
Right.
we all have to be careful that we not think of
Sure.
ourselves too highly than we ought to. But we also don't demean ourselves. Well, I'm just terrible. My kids, they don't win when they go to think. That's not the purpose of what we're doing. And it's really easy to get sucked into that. And we have to be careful not to do that.
Wow, those are great admonitions, great insights. I love the first one, show up for them, because I know so often as an educator, when we hear of an activity, especially if it's an evening or something, the first thing that comes to our mind is what? Do I have to go to that?
Right.
Because we think, I've worked all day, I've been here 80 hours this week already. Do I have to go to that? But the impact that has on the students, I don't think we even fully grasp. And like you said, they get so excited when they see you and they talk about it and they're excited that you came out for them. And it does make that impact in their heart. It
Yes.
connects you to them. And when you have them in English class or music or art class, you've made that connection. And I love that. And the not comparing ourselves is so true. Fine arts is so competitive and it's easy to look at other schools and all their facilities and equipment and talent, whatever it may be. But like you said, God has put you there and God has given you exactly what you need. Emily, that was great.
Thank you. And probably the last thing I would say, God used it in my own life as we prepared for competition, is Galatians 6:9, be not weary in well doing. Because I know that we can get really weary in well doing. And God admonishes us not to be weary in well doing. And I got to reap the benefits of playing with my student under the direction of another student. And God just said, see, don't be weary in all this that's going on right now. You're going to reap those benefits later on.
Yeah, that's amazing. What a great opportunity. Very rewarding and definitely a blessing from the Lord. And Emily, you have been a blessing to us today. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and your expertise with us. You're always very positive and encouraging, and I appreciate your time today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
And to those of you joining us, thank you also for being with us. I hope you received a blessing from what Emily shared. Remember to go to teachereditionpodcast.com to learn more about the show and to submit questions for our upcoming episodes. Of course, be sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on social media. Now it's time to get back to your day, but it's not just any day. Every day in the classroom is your day to impact and inspire through God's power and through His grace working in you. Now, go do what God has called you to do.